Hello, I'm Jeff Murdock, Advocacy and Education Manager for Historic Seattle. Today I'm going to share with you some research I've completed on the life and work of Robert George Reichert, a Seattle architect who practiced in the late 20th century. I wanted to start by sharing one of Reichert's best-known designs, the Ekman House. Designed in 1958, it was constructed at the same time as Seattle's new freeway. It was controversial during its construction, drawing news crews that described it as a wedge of cheese or a ski jump. The drawing reflects Reichert's unique rendering style, integrating St. Mark's Cathedral above it. The Ekman House was endangered in the 1990s and was acquired by Historic Seattle and rehabilitated in 1998. It became a City of Seattle landmark in 2010 and remains under Historic Seattle's stewardship. Robert Reichert has been described as Seattle's least conventional architect, as its most outspoken architect, and as an undiscovered, extraordinary mind in the architecture and the inventor of an architectural pop movement. He's also known for creating works prefiguring the origins of postmodernism with his early use of supergraphics. Reichert completed the majority and the best quality of his work in the 1950s and 60s, a period of rapid growth throughout the United States and especially in Seattle. It was a period of rationalizing design and construction methods to meet the requirements of this growth. Architectural education throughout the country also changed during this period based on the model developed at Harvard in order to meet the demands for building designers. Reichert's practice, however, would remain from the outset and throughout his career as an expression of his very early experiences of architectural, spiritual, and musical spaces. He believed that he could only work alone and that his design was a singular expression of art. He rejected many of the ideas which came from the development of a regional Pacific Northwest interpretation of modernism. Reichert's buildings are insular, not open to the landscaper views. They conceal their structural systems rather than celebrate the technology of local building materials. The buildings are decorated, simple forms, unlike any other architecture in the region. Most of the works being shown here today are from the Robert Reichert Collection of the University of Washington Library's Special Collections. It's a diverse collection of drawings, photographs, notes, napkin sketches, holiday cards, journals, and so forth. Reichert's drawings were mostly made on various humble materials of multiple sizes, configurations, and media. There are many boxes of ink sketches on grease-stained folding napkins from the local Hasty Tasty, the A&W, or some other greasy spoon. Truly, it becomes clear that Reichert's design inspirations happened on road trips on his Harley-Davidson motorcycle and in crowded coffee shops throughout the city. He also kept carefully folded vest pocket sheets, 8.5 by 11 pages, on which he recorded his thoughts, what he wore, his daily site visits, shopping trips, notes and sketches on projects and expenditures. A collection of journals, beginning on the date of his mother's death in 1961, provided context into the architect's work, routines, personal challenges, and reflections on his design theories. Presentation drawings were typically graphite on tracing paper, which allowed Reichert to make diazo blue line prints, a process popular at the time. The drawings are now in very fragile condition, brittle and often torn, making preservation of the collection a challenge. Robert Reichert was born in North Dakota in 1921, the only child of Bernard and Matilda Reichert. His family moved to Minneapolis while he was very young, and he would grow up and attend school there. He began the study of music and architecture at a very early age and was working in an office and playing organ professionally by the time he was in high school. Robert Reichert described a solitary childhood in which his older parents maintained a serious and quiet household. Robert recalled writing on his father's business routes throughout rural Minnesota, sometimes making side visits to 19th century revival-style churches that contained massive pipe organs. Robert was deeply affected by the experience of being within these liturgical spaces. As a very young person, he began a lifelong investigation into the connections between architecture, music, and spirituality. It was the feeling of being inside of such a building, the emotional responses brought about by the patterns and contrasts of space, light, and sound, which Reichert would spend a lifetime striving to create in his own designs. He recalled having hobbies that neither his mother nor his teachers understood. During his free time, he practiced music and drew pictures of buildings and motorcycles. Tilly started Reichert's piano lessons at age 4, and his organ studies began as a 7th grade student at the McPhail School of Music in Minneapolis. To train himself in design, young Reichert studied books from the local Minneapolis library that described important buildings throughout the world, recreating them in drawing and model form. Reichert attended Central High School in Minneapolis and as a freshman obtained his first real jobs, working both as a church organist and as a draftsman in the office of Clyde Smith, a Minneapolis architect and Christian Scientist. Smith's growing practice was awarded increasingly large projects such that when clients arrived with small residential commissions, Reichert was given the opportunity to complete these jobs with a high degree of independence. This drawing is of the Roy Wallen House in Minneapolis, which Reichert completed as a high school senior. After graduation, Reichert enrolled at the University of Minnesota to study architecture and continued to work in the Smith office. The economic stagnation in the United States following the Great Depression took its toll on the Reichert family, and Robert had to withdraw from the university in June 1941. Not interested in becoming a soldier, Reichert was recruited by a traveling representative of the Boeing Company for a drafting position in Seattle. In need of funds, Reichert accepted the job and boarded a train for the Pacific Northwest. Reichert's parents followed him to Seattle, moving the household to a rental house in Seattle's Queen Anne neighborhood. After graduation on September 18, 1947, Reichert and his parents returned to Seattle, feeling there would be better opportunities for a young architect in the rapidly growing region. During these road trips across the country, Reichert would often document church buildings, noting the architect, organ type, and architectural features of each one. He took a job in the office of Bebb and Jones, and Reichert sat for the week-long architectural registration exam in July 1948, one of only 12 who passed out of the 120 who took the exam. In the fall of 1950, Reichert moved to Boston to enroll in Walter Gropius's master studio at the Harvard Graduate School of Design. After his first project at Harvard, which consisted of a headquarters for the American Association for the Advancement of Science, Gropius invited Reichert's class for dinner, and Reichert took rigorous notes. Gropius seemed to be speaking directly to Reichert when he advised, "Stick to what you know is right, no matter what it costs one temporarily, loss of a commission or other. In the end, you will be repaid. I have gained and not suffered from what I knew to be right, and I have stuck to it." Completing his Master of Architecture degree, Reichert drove home to Seattle in 1951 and took a job in the office of J. Lister Holmes, an architect who became noted for transitioning from the Beaux-Arts design traditions to modernism. Reichert thrived in the office, working on several projects, including the Ancient Order of United Workmen, building on Dexter Avenue North, shown here on the top. The primary facade reveals a fanciful play with window layout, and Reichert clearly thought the design of signage for the building should be a prominent architectural feature. He also worked on an addition to the Seattle Labor Temple in Belltown, identifiable here by the fresh brick color at the top of the building. Soon after completing graduate school, and while he was still working for the Holmes office, Reichert began planning a design for his own home and design studio. Reichert's father died in 1952, and so the new house would become a home for both Reichert and his mother. It would also accommodate his Corvette, his Harley-Davidson motorcycle, his future design practice, and a planned multi-story pipe organ. Clearly, this was an ambitious program for what would be a very small house on a very tight budget on a site of 60 by 30 feet on the north slope of Queen Anne Hill. Reichert noted how easily the design progressed from napkin sketch concept to fully developed design. He said, "Though I had little time to spend on this design, it came out and unfolded naturally and easily, like a revelation, full of voices, ideas, history, and with a message. The building's form largely results from the height and setback requirements and the need for vertical space to house the long organ pipes. While neighbors and the local press may have seen it differently, Reichert felt that the massing of the house complemented its neighbors and did not overpower them. He noted that the house was only different from its neighborhood context in its style. He called his home a tower design inspired by the churches he had visited as a child." The building suggested no point of entry to the visitor. Other than the garage door, there is no portico or visible front door. The exterior landing on the southeast corner of the house, no doorway is visible. A guest would ring a buzzer on the wall and wait, awkwardly perched on the landing, until Robert or Tilly would peer out and invite the guest to enter. The reinforcement of building design themes in the garden, in the form of sculptures, planters, fences, and gates, would become a typical approach by the architect. He designed the house and the landscape as a complete work. One of Reichert's students had the opportunity to visit him at his house, and he recalled, "I arrived at the house, walking up the open stairway of concrete and not very wide either, resulting in a small platform. From this platform, the anticipated front door was non-existent. In its place was a door buzzer and a small opening. One felt quite uneasy because you faced a large white wall with huge black circular graphics. Remember, as if this wasn't uncomfortable enough, the narrowness of the standing platform forced you to look at this great white triangular surface from an impossible perspective. I felt exposed, but pushed the door buzzer and waited. The white wall made it impossible to see who the woman's voice was, only a dark hole. The voice belonged to his mother. The voice asked, "What time was your appointment?" "At noon," I replied. The person behind the dark hole then instructed me that it was 11:55 and to please wait. So I waited, all exposed and uneasy. Right at noon, Mr. Reichert rode up in full leather to the garage entrance and into the house. Almost immediately, I was instructed to walk up to the wood gate and into the courtyard. The entrance was a glass door. He appeared in his suit and tie. He never introduced me to his mother, and I never saw her. Anyway, he crawled up into his pipe organ seat and played Bach. The floor plan was tight but flexible, and the finished studio space had a curiously low ceiling height. The architect could barely stand upright in his workspace. However, the room expanded vertically to the organ pipe wall. The lowest level contained Reichert's private living space and the garage, facilitating his nightly motorcycle jaunts without disturbing his mother. Reichert claimed that his house embodied the ideas of romantic architecture through the incorporation of ornament. He wrote, "Most meaningful is the shadow painting on the south wall. This building does not have to depend on sunlight, but has its shadows on cloudy days and at night as well. It is expressive at all times, giving radiance to its surroundings. The design of the shadow reveals a love for traditionalism and its history. Its paneling and shapes recall the Italian Renaissance, particularly the wall designs of the Florence Cathedral and Della Salute in Venice. The interior furnishings were modern. Reichert painted a mural on the sloping studio ceiling, which he titled Doorway to Heaven. Considered without its eclectic ornament, the house studio is a highly functional but minimalist building, accommodating and formally responding to its multifaceted program." While planning his house, Reichert was approached by the building committee of the First Church of Christ Scientists to help with the design for a church building in Bellevue. The church specified that they wished to hire him alone and not the J. Lister Holmes office. The signing of this contract in September 1953 marked the beginning of the sole practice of Robert George Reichert, architect. The house studio and the church, the largest project the architect would ever design, were projects that would inform all of Reichert's subsequent works. Their designs happened concurrently, and Reichert clearly understood the related programs for the two projects, a house for worship and music, and a house for design and music. Reichert was well prepared for the Bellevue Church project, having studied and documented dozens of Christian Science buildings representing the entire history of the typology throughout the country. Reichert had designed a Christian Science church as his undergraduate thesis project at Minnesota, and he had studied acoustics at Harvard for his design of a theater auditorium. Reichert's proposal featured two separate, highly sculptural building volumes sited to create a protected outdoor plaza. He suggested that the entire church building formed a tower, conceived in section as a triangular volume. In elevation, the folded building forms appeared like origami sculptures set lightly upon heavy triangular posts. He noted that the building was designed to sympathize with the surrounding forest, rugged hills, and mountains. It was a provocative and unorthodox design compared to more traditional Christian Science building typologies. The church building committee was not happy with the design, responding formally in writing that they would not accept the studies as presented. The committee noted that they were not sure that they wanted a tower, but a building that would be visible to the community as a church. This was a blow to Reichert's carefully researched and early formed ideas on the meaning of Christian Science buildings. They commented that the light structure did not convey a sense of permanence and suggested a masonry structure might be more appropriate. Reichert went back to work and quickly designed multiple revised schemes for the building committee. Perhaps as a result of this intensive revisiting of the requirements, Reichert came to the realization that his original scheme was the correct design approach. He wrote to the church leaders, perhaps the members had not spent sufficient time reviewing his scheme. Through this intercourse, Reichert's inexperience and immaturity exacerbated an already strained relationship with his client. The revised design resembles a fanciful hat set on the landscape, its scalloped edges meeting the ground and providing openings for light and access. The covered connection between the two round buildings was awkward and far less successful than his first submission. It's not clear whether Reichert actually believed he was providing a design that would be acceptable to the church board. It seems more likely that he provided a less serious design in response to the committee's banal requests. In November 1955, Reichert received a registered letter immediately terminating the church's contract with him. Reichert was unable to salvage the commission. Between 1952 and his death in 1996, Reichert completed over 75 projects, primarily residential designs, often for organists, musicians, motorcyclists, or those who appreciated Reichert's controversial architecture. I wanted to finish today by showing some of this work. This is a house for Robert and Nancy Ekman. It sits at the edge of a steeply sloping hill north of the University District. In it, Reichert continues his investigation into design with triangular sections. Most interesting is his integration of the front yard design to the overall scheme. Next is a design that Reichert proposed as an alternative to the Space Needle. He suggested that the tower should be placed at the top of Queen Anne Hill rather than in its current location. It was to be clad in shimmering aluminum, and he suggested a youth and art gallery would occupy the ground level. Reichert was interested in the way architecture responded to the automobile and designed several structures for thoroughfares leading to the burgeoning suburbs. This boat shop on Aurora Avenue was a fanciful formal expression designed to capture the attention of cars whizzing by. This is one of several motorcycle shops or car part shops that Reichert designed. As with most of his projects, his attention to the treatment of the automobile figures as importantly as that of the human occupant. This photograph is the interior of the same shop, with Reichert sharing his murals with the shop owner's son. Next is a house designed for Millie Close in Stevens Lake, north of Seattle, the mother of the artist Chuck Close. Most of Reichert's successful and built residential projects were done for woman clients. Millie Close was also a musician, and so, like Reichert's studio, the house is designed for its acoustic quality. When we look at the body of Reichert's work, it doesn't fit into any known category. It is certainly out of phase with other work being produced at that time. In some ways, the designs seem prescient of later styles and thinking in architecture. Reichert's work was published in several European journals. In 1961, the critic Bruno Zevi suggested that Reichert's work would not be appreciated in the current time. He described Reichert's houses as toys fixed there on the ground, almost by chance. They're connected more to the electricity of telegraph appliances in the sky because they have a tension that prevents them from belonging to the undifferentiated world. To build these dreams, a strong personality is needed and also an original creative mind. They are, in a way, futuristic buildings, but to look at the future is necessary in the present stage of intellectual and artistic depression. I appreciate the opportunity to present this research to you, and I welcome your questions and comments. You can reach me through Historic Seattle. Thank you.